Kim Tae stepped outside his weather station to check the storm readings. The wind on Titan 7 was getting worse, and ice crystals cut through the air like tiny knives. He pulled his thick coat tighter and walked toward the monitoring equipment. That's when he saw something strange in the snow. At first he thought it was just debris blown by the storm, but as he got closer, his heart stopped. It was a person. Or at least, something that looked like a person. The figure was curled up in a ball, almost completely buried under the white snow. Blue skin showed through the gaps where the wind had blown the snow away. Tae had seen aliens before, but never one like this. Her skin was a beautiful shade of blue, but now it was turning an ugly gray color. That meant frostbite. That meant she was dying. Tae knelt down and brushed the snow off her face. She was unconscious, her breathing so shallow he could barely see her chest moving. Strange markings were carved into her forehead, and they looked fresh. The cuts were still red, even in the freezing cold. He could read the alien text. Working on frontier worlds meant learning different languages. The words made his stomach sick. Defective, no value. Someone had marked her like she was broken merchandise. Around her neck was a heavy metal collar, the kind used on slaves throughout the galaxy. The collar was beeping weakly, probably running out of power. That explained everything. She was a slave who had been thrown away like garbage. Tae looked around the empty landscape. His weather station was the only building for hundreds of kilometers. The nearest settlement was 3 days away by transport. No one would know if he just walked back inside and pretended he never saw her. That's what most people would do. The galactic hegemony had strict laws about interfering with slave property. Even abandoned slaves were still considered property until they died. Helping her could mean years in prison. It could mean losing everything he had worked for. But Tae couldn't do it. He couldn't just leave someone to freeze to death in the snow. It didn't matter that she was an alien. It didn't matter that she was a slave. She was a living being, and she was suffering. He slid his arms under her body and lifted her up. She was lighter than he expected, but her skin was ice-cold even through his thick gloves. Her head fell back, showing more of those terrible markings on her neck and arms. Someone had hurt her badly before dumping her here. The wind tried to push him back as he carried her toward his station. Snow whipped around them both, and he had to squint to see the door. His boots slipped on the ice, but he held on tight. He wasn't going to drop her now. Inside the station, warmth hit them both like a wall. Tae's home was small but comfortable. He had a fireplace, a medical kit, and enough food to last through the worst storms. Right now, that's exactly what she needed. He laid her down on his couch near the fire and grabbed every blanket he could find. Her blue skin was still turning gray in some places, which meant the frostbite was getting worse. He had to work fast. As he wrapped the blankets around her, Tae wondered who she was and how she had ended up outside his door. But those questions could wait. Right now, all that mattered was keeping her alive. The storm outside was getting stronger, but inside his little station, something important was just beginning. 3 hours later, the alien woman's eyes slowly opened. They were a deep purple color, unlike anything Tae had ever seen. She blinked several times, confused and scared. Her gaze moved around the room until it settled on him. She tried to sit up quickly, but pain shot across her face and she fell back down. Her hands went to her head, pressing against her temples like she had a terrible headache. "Easy," Tae said, softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe now. You were freezing outside." The woman stared at him with wide eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead of words, Tae heard a voice inside his head. It was weak and broken, like a radio with bad reception. Why did you help me?" The voice in his mind was filled with confusion and fear. Tae jumped back in surprise. He had heard about telepathic aliens, but never met one. "You can speak. In my head?" Pain flashed across her face again, and she grabbed her temples. "I'm sorry," she whispered out loud this time. Her voice was soft but shaky. "I can't control it. That's why they threw me away." She pointed to the markings on her forehead. "My name is Nira. I was supposed to be a mind reader for the slave markets, but my abilities are broken. Sometimes I hear everyone's thoughts at once. Sometimes I can't hear anything. The pain never stops. Tay felt anger building in his chest. They threw you away because you were in pain. Nira nodded sadly. Defective. Telepaths have no value. Better to let me die than waste food on me. She said it like she believed it was true. That's horrible, Tay said. He looked at the thick metal collar around her neck. It was beeping faster now, and he could see small lights flashing red. What does that collar do? It controls my thoughts. Keeps me from using my abilities without permission. But it's broken. 2. It hurts more than it helps now. Tay stood up and walked to his tool chest. Then let's get it off you. Nira's eyes went wide with terror. No, you can't. It's illegal to remove slave collars. They'll put you in prison. They'll kill you. Let me worry about that, Tay said, pulling out his mining laser and metal cutters. Working on Titan 7 meant he had tools that could cut through almost anything. But why? Nira asked, tears forming in her purple eyes. Why would you risk everything for someone like me? Tay paused and looked at her. Because no one deserves to be in pain, and no one deserves to be owned by someone else. He knelt down beside the couch and examined the collar carefully. It was locked with both electronic and physical mechanisms. The mining laser could cut through the metal, but he had to be careful not to hurt her. This might feel warm, he warned her, but I promise I won't hurt you. As he worked, Nira watched him with amazement. In all my years as a slave, no one has ever been kind to me, not once. Most beings see my collar and walk away. Others just see me as broken property. The laser cut through the first lock with a soft hiss. Well, you're not property anymore, Tay said firmly. When the collar finally fell away, Nira gasped and touched her neck. For the first time in years, she could breathe freely. The constant electronic buzzing in her head stopped. I don't understand humans, she whispered. Everyone says you're weak and primitive, but you just freed a slave and risked your life for a stranger. Tay smiled and threw the broken collar into his fireplace. Maybe that's exactly what makes us strong. 2 days passed peacefully. Nira was getting stronger, and the grey color was leaving her skin. She helped Tay with small tasks around the station, and for the first time in her life, she seemed happy. But their peace didn't last long. The sound of engines broke the quiet morning air. Tay looked out his window and saw 3 large ships landing near his station. They were sleek and black, with the hegemony symbol painted on their sides. His heart sank. He knew exactly who they were. Nira, get behind the storage room, he said quickly. Don't come out no matter what happens. Her face went pale. They found me, didn't they? Just hide. I'll handle this. Heavy footsteps crunched through the snow outside. Someone pounded on his door so hard the whole building shook. Tay took a deep breath and opened it. 3 aliens stood outside, all wearing the dark uniforms of slave traders. The leader was tall and thin, with grey skin and cold yellow eyes. His badge said, Captain Vex. Human, Captain Vex said in a voice like grinding metal. We're here for stolen property. A defective telepathic slave was abandoned near this location. Our scanners show she's inside your building. I don't know what you're talking about, Tay replied calmly. Vex stepped closer, towering over Tay. Don't play games with me, primitive. Interfering with slave property is a serious crime. You could spend 20 years in a hegemony prison. This is human territory, Tay said, not backing down. You have no authority here. The captain laughed, a harsh sound. Your little frontier settlements exist because we allow them to. Cross us and we'll shut down every human operation on this moon. Behind Vex, the other traders were setting up scanning equipment. Red beams swept across Tay's station, searching for life signs. Captain, one of them called out, I'm reading 2 life forms inside. 1 human, 1 Zelani female. There's your proof, Vex said with a cruel smile. Bring her out now or we'll take her by force and you'll be coming with us in chains. Tay's hand slowly moved to a small device on his belt. It looked like a simple emergency beacon, the kind all frontier workers carried. But this one was different. You know what your problem is, Tay said, pressing a hidden button on the device. You think humans are stupid and weak. We know you are, Vex replied. That's why you're stuck on frozen rocks like this, while real civilizations control the galaxy. The beacon sent out a silent signal that spread across Titan 7's communication network. It wasn't a call for help. It was something much more dangerous. "Maybe we are weak," Tay said, "but we're not alone." Within minutes, strange things started happening across the moon. Human settlements that had been broadcasting normally suddenly went silent. Mining operations stopped sending their daily reports. Weather stations like Tai's stopped transmitting data. One of the traders was monitoring communications from their ship. "Captain," he called out, sounding worried, "I'm losing contact with our tracking stations. Human settlements are dropping." "Off our sensors one by one," Vex frowned. "Equipment malfunction. These primitive colonies break down all the time." But Tay was smiling now. "It's not a malfunction. Every human settlement on Titan 7 just activated something called a blackout protocol. Your sensors can't track what they can't see." "Impossible," Vex snarled. "Humans don't have that kind of technology." "Funny thing about being underestimated," Tay said. "People don't pay attention to what you're really doing. While you've been looking down on us, we've been preparing." The trader at the communication station was getting more worried. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from human settlements. It's like they're powering up weapons systems." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Vex's yellow eyes. This wasn't going according to plan. Humans were supposed to be easy to intimidate. "You're bluffing," the captain said, but his voice wasn't as confident as before. Tay's beacon beeped softly. All across Titan 7, his message had been received. "And understood. The response was already beginning, am I?" Tay asked. "I guess we'll find out." Before Captain Vex could respond to Tay's challenge, the sound of more engines filled the air. But these weren't hegemony ships. Two smaller human transports landed nearby, kicking up clouds of snow and ice. The doors opened, and armed humans stepped out. They moved with military precision, surrounding the slave traders' ships. Vex and his men suddenly found themselves outnumbered. "What is this?" Vex demanded, his voice rising with anger and confusion. A woman with short black hair approached, carrying a plasma rifle like she knew how to use it. Behind her walked a younger man with kind eyes but a determined expression. Both wore the simple clothes of frontier workers, but their weapons were definitely not simple. "Kim Tay," the woman called out cheerfully, as if armed standoffs were perfectly normal. "Looks like you finally pressed the button, Li Min," Tay replied with a grin. "Took you long enough to get here." The younger man stepped forward. "Sorry we're late, Park Sol here," he said, introducing himself to the confused aliens. "We had to stop and pick up some supplies." Captain Vex looked between the humans, trying to understand what was happening. "More primitives? This changes nothing. We still outnumber you." Li Min laughed. "Do you? How many ships did you bring? 3? "That's more than enough to handle a few frontier workers," Vex snarled. "So, how many human settlements are there on Titan 7? Min asked her companion. "Last count was 47 active sites," Sul replied casually. "Each one has at least 5 to 10 people. That's roughly 300 humans, give or take." "And they're all part of the network," Min continued. "Every single one been building it for 12 years now." Vex's confidence was starting to crack. "What network? You humans barely have functioning communication systems." Tay stepped forward, no longer hiding his smile. "That's what we wanted you to think. See, Captain, while you've been treating us like stupid farmers, we've been building something special." Min pulled out a device that looked like a simple tablet. But when she activated it, a holographic map appeared showing the entire moon. Dozens of green dots pulsed across the surface. "Every green dot is a human settlement," she explained. "What you call isolated outposts are actually connected by a secret communication network. We've been coordinating for years." "Coordinating? What?" Vex demanded. Sul's expression grew serious. "Rescue operations. Every time we heard about slaves being abandoned or mistreated, we'd find ways to help. Quietly, carefully, without making noise that would bring attention." "That weather station Tay runs?" Min pointed to his building. "It's also a safe house. We've helped dozens of escaped slaves pass through here on their way to freedom." Tai nodded. "The mining equipment I used to remove Nira's collar, it's designed for more than just cutting rocks. We've been removing slave collars for years." Captain Vex looked around at the growing number of humans emerging from the transport ships. They all carried weapons, and they all looked like they knew how to use Them. This is impossible, he said. Humans don't organize like this. You're too primitive, too divided. Maybe on most worlds, Sewell admitted. But frontier life teaches you something important. Out here, we depend on each other. We take care of our neighbors, and we don't abandon people who need help. Min activated another function on her tablet. The map zoomed out, showing other moons and planets. More green dots appeared. Titan 7 isn't alone either, she said. We've been in contact with human settlements across 12 different worlds, all of them part of the same network, all of them ready to help. You see, Tay explained to the increasingly nervous slave traders, while you were busy thinking humans were weak and stupid, we were busy proving you wrong. We just did it quietly. The communications officer from Vex's ship came running over. Captain, I'm receiving reports from other systems. Human settlements are activating unknown technology. Everywhere. Our slave transport routes are being disrupted. Vex's yellow eyes went wide. How is this possible? Simple, Min said, shouldering her rifle. You forgot the most important thing about humans. We don't like bullies, and we really don't like people who hurt others. Sewell checked his weapon and looked directly at Captain Vex. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Nera alone. You're going to leave this moon. And you're going to tell the hegemony that humans aren't as helpless as they thought. Because if you don't, Tay added quietly, you're going to discover just how strong, primitive humans can be when we work together. While the humans faced down Captain Vex outside, Nera sat quietly in the storage room, but she wasn't hiding anymore. For the first time since her collar was removed, her telepathic abilities felt clear and strong. The constant pain was gone, and she could think properly. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. Without the collar's interference, her telepathic range was much wider than anyone had realized. She could sense other minds across the moon, then beyond it, stretching out into space. There, she found what she was looking for. Other slaves. Hundreds of them scattered across different ships and planets in the sector. Their minds felt familiar, full of pain, fear, and hopelessness. Just like hers had been, Nera took a deep breath and sent out a simple message. Not in words, but in pure emotion and images. She showed them Kim Tay finding her in the snow. She showed him removing her collar despite the danger. She showed the humans outside, standing up to the slave traders without fear. The message was simple. Humans will help. On a mining ship 3 planets away, a Kalani slave named Rix was scrubbing floors when Nera's message hit his mind. He dropped his cleaning tools, tears forming in his large eyes. Hope. For the first time in years, he felt hope. Rix had telepathic abilities too, though weaker than Nera's. He grabbed onto her message and passed it along to other slaves on his ship, then to slaves on other ships. The mental signal jumped from mind to mind like wildfire. Humans will help, the message said, and with it came proof. Images of humans. Removing collars, humans standing up to the hegemony, humans treating slaves like people instead of property. On the industrial world of Kepler 9, a group of construction slaves received the message while hauling heavy materials. Their human overseer, a quiet man named Cho Day, had always been different from the alien bosses. He brought them extra water when the overseers weren't looking. He never used the shock sticks that other guards carried. When the slaves whispered to Cho Day about the message, his eyes lit up. "It's time," he said quietly. "We've been waiting for this signal." The slaves stared at him in confusion. Cho Day activated a hidden communicator and spoke in rapid human language. Within minutes, other human workers across the construction site were moving with purpose. They weren't just construction workers. They were part of the network. The same scene played out across dozens of worlds. Human janitors, mechanics, cooks, and laborers, people the hegemony barely noticed, suddenly revealed their true purpose. They had spent years getting jobs close to slave operations, waiting for the right moment to act. On the luxury planet of Arcadia Prime, human servants in wealthy households received coded messages. They quietly unlocked doors that had kept alien slaves trapped for years. House slaves who thought they would die in captivity suddenly found themselves being led to hidden escape routes. In the asteroid mining belt, human engineers working on routine maintenance began sabotaging the control systems that kept slave ships running. Navigation computers failed. Life support systems developed mysterious glitches, and communication arrays went dark. But the most amazing thing happened when the slaves themselves started fighting back. Neera's message hadn't just brought hope, it had brought unity. Slaves from different species who had never been able to communicate before were now connected through the telepathic network. A revolution was spreading across the galaxy, one mind at a time, on a transport ship carrying freshly captured slaves to market. The prisoners suddenly stopped being afraid. They knew help was coming. When their guards opened the holding cells for the daily meal, instead of cowering, the slaves stood together. The guards found themselves facing not terrified individuals, but a united group that refused to be broken. And in the engine room, a human mechanic named Wang Jin was already working to disable the ship's weapons. Back on Titan 7, Neera opened her eyes and smiled. The telepathic network was growing stronger every minute. She could feel thousands of minds connecting, sharing hope and courage. "Tay," she called out softly. He came to check on her, leaving the standoff outside for a moment. "Are you okay?" "Better." "Then okay," she said. "I just sent a message to every slave in the sector. They know humans will help them now. And they're not waiting to be rescued anymore. They're rescuing themselves." Outside, Captain Vex's communicator was buzzing, with emergency reports from across the galaxy. The slave trade was under attack everywhere at once. The humans had kept their secret well. Captain Vex's worst day was about to get much worse. His communicator crackled to life with an urgent message from Hegemony Command. "Captain Vex, this is Commander Zek. We're sending a full battle fleet to your location. These humans have crossed the line." Vex looked relieved. "Thank you, Commander. How long until you arrive?" "We're already here." Above Titan 7, the sky filled with massive Hegemony warships. 12 heavy cruisers and dozens of fighter craft descended through the atmosphere. Their weapons were charged and ready. Commander Zek expected this show of force to end the human rebellion immediately. He was very wrong. As the first warship entered attack position over Ty's weather station, something impossible happened. The small building disappeared. "What?" Commander Zek stared at his screens in confusion. Where did the structure go? His weapons officer checked the instruments twice. "Sir, I'm reading some kind of advanced cloaking field. The building is still there, but our targeting systems can't lock onto it." Across the moon's surface, the same thing was happening everywhere. Human settlements that had looked like simple outposts were suddenly protected by energy shields that shouldn't exist. The technology was more advanced than anything the Hegemony used. "How is this possible?" Zek muttered. "Humans barely have spaceflight." Down on the surface, Li Min was grinning as she watched the confused alien ships circling overhead. "Sol, I think it's time to show them what we've really been building out here." Park Sol nodded and activated a control panel that had been hidden inside what looked like a simple storage container. Shield generators at full power, defensive weapons coming online. What the aliens had thought was a mining laser suddenly rose from the ground, revealing itself as a powerful plasma cannon. Similar weapons emerged from hidden positions all around the settlement. Captain Vex stumbled backward in shock. "Those aren't mining tools." "Nope," Tay said cheerfully, "though they do work great for cutting through slave collars." Commander Zek's fleet tried to attack, but their weapons harmlessly struck the human shields. The energy barriers absorbed every shot, without even flickering. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human defenses are holding. Our weapons aren't even scratching their shields." "Use the heavy bombardment cannons," Zek ordered. But when the massive weapons fired, something even more shocking happened. The human settlements didn't just defend, they shot back. Streams of plasma energy erupted from hidden weapons across Titan 7. The shots were precise and powerful, targeting the Hegemony ship's weapon systems and engines. Within minutes, 3 warships were disabled and drifting helplessly. "Impossible," Zek shouted. "Humans don't have military technology." His communications officer was receiving reports from across the galaxy. "Commander, I'm getting similar reports from 12 other systems." Human settlements everywhere are revealing advanced weapons and defenses. Sir, another officer added nervously, intelligence is reporting that some of our primitive human workers were actually trained military engineers. They've been installing this equipment for years, while we thought they were just doing maintenance. Commander, Zek felt his confidence crumbling. The hegemony had controlled the galaxy for centuries by keeping other species weak and divided. But humans had been playing a completely different game. On the surface, Wang Bin emerged from what looked like a simple farming dome, but he wasn't a farmer. He was a former human military commander who had spent 10 years pretending to grow crops while actually building a fortress. Min, we've got 15 more settlements coming online, he reported over the communicator. The network is fully activated. All across Titan 7, structures that had looked like weather stations, mining outposts, and research facilities were revealing their true nature. Underground bunkers emerged from beneath innocent-looking buildings. Weapon platforms rose from camouflaged positions. The humans hadn't just been hiding their technology. They had been building a secret military network right under the hegemony's nose. You see, Commander, Tay said, broadcasting on an open channel, so Zek could hear him. The thing about humans is that we're really good at learning from our mistakes. What mistakes? Zek demanded. Well, we learned what happens when we're not prepared for bullies. So we spent the last 20 years making sure we'd be ready next time. Li Min's voice joined the broadcast. Every human settlement in the frontier systems has been working together. While you thought we were just trying to survive, we were actually building something you never expected. An army, Park Sol added, hidden in plain sight. Commander Zek watched his tactical display as more human positions revealed themselves. His fleet was completely outgunned and surrounded. This was all planned, he whispered in horror. From the very beginning, Tay confirmed, we just needed the right moment to show you what humans can really do when we work together. Above them, the mighty hegemony fleet found itself trapped by the primitive species they had always ignored. While Commander Zek's fleet was trapped above Titan 7, something even bigger was happening across the galaxy. In the Vega system, a convoy of cargo ships approached the notorious slave processing center on Hades 3. The ships looked ordinary, just human traders bringing supplies to the prison world. But appearances can be deceiving. Captain Cho Bin stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching the massive slave facility grow larger on his screens. From the outside, it looked like any other cargo hauler. Inside, it was packed with armed humans and liberation equipment. Nira, can you hear me? He spoke into his headset. Across the galaxy on Titan 7, Nira's voice came back clearly through the telepathic network. I hear you, Cho Bin. I'm connected to 47 slaves inside the facility. They're ready. What about the guards? Most are alien, but there are 6 humans working there. They're part of our network, too. They've been feeding information to us for 2 years. Cho Bin smiled grimly. The hegemony had made a fatal mistake by putting humans in positions throughout their empire. They thought humans were too primitive to be dangerous. They were about to learn how wrong they were. All units, this is Eagle 1, Cho Bin spoke into his communicator. Begin the liberation protocol. The cargo ships suddenly changed. Hidden. Weapon ports opened along their hulls. Engine signatures shifted as military-grade power cores came online. What had looked like slow, harmless freighters were actually fast attack vessels. But the real surprise came from inside the slave facility itself. The human workers, janitors, cooks, and maintenance staff had spent months mapping every corridor and security system. When Cho Bin's signal came, they acted. Power went out across the prison. Emergency systems failed. Cell doors that had kept thousands of beings trapped for years suddenly clicked open. Through the telepathic network, Nira coordinated the escape. She could sense every slave's location and guide them away from danger. Turn left at the next corridor, she whispered into their minds. Guards coming from the right. The aliens who ran the facility panicked. They had never faced an organized slave revolt before. When prisoners usually tried to escape, they were alone and scared. But these slaves moved like a trained army, knowing exactly where to go and what to do. How are they coordinating like this? The facility commander shouted. They're different species. They can't even speak the same languages. But they didn't need to speak. Neera's telepathic network connected them all, turning thousands of frightened individuals into a unified force. Chobin's ships landed in the facility's main courtyard. As humans poured out with weapons and medical supplies, freed slaves cheered. For the first time in years, many had never seen a human before, but Neera's mental messages had prepared them. "These are the ones who help," the telepathic network whispered. "These are the ones who don't abandon people." The same scene was playing out on two other worlds simultaneously. Captain Yun Seo led a liberation fleet to the mining world of Kepler-12, while Captain Young Min coordinated the rescue of household slaves on the luxury planet of Nova Prime. Each operation was perfectly timed and executed. The humans had studied hegemony operations for years, learning every weakness and preparing for this moment. But the most important part wasn't the military precision. It was what happened after the rescues. The freed slaves didn't just run away and hide. They joined the rebellion. A Zelani engineer who had been forced to build weapons for the hegemony now used his skills to upgrade human ships. A Kalani pilot who had been a pleasure slave began training human fighters in advanced flight techniques. A Thorian medic started treating injured rebels with healing methods the hegemony had kept secret. Within days, the rebellion had grown from a few thousand humans to tens of thousands of beings from dozens of species. Each freed slave brought new skills, new knowledge, and new reasons to fight. The hegemony's intelligence reports were getting more desperate each day. "Sir, we're losing control of the outer systems," an officer reported to High Command. The humans somehow coordinated. Simultaneous attacks on 17 different facilities. "Impossible," the High Commander replied. "Humans don't have that kind of organization capability." "Maybe they didn't before," the officer said quietly. "But they do now." Back on Titan 7, Neera felt the telepathic network growing stronger every hour. More freed slaves with psychic abilities were joining the mental link, expanding their range and coordination capabilities. "Tay," she said, "I can feel the rebellion spreading. It's like a wave moving across the galaxy, freeing more people. Everywhere it goes." Kim Tay looked out at the still-trapped hegemony fleet above them. "Good. Maybe now they'll understand that humans don't start fights." "But we finished them," Li Min added, checking her weapons. "The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The rebellion might have stayed hidden if not for one crucial mistake the hegemony made. They tried to cover up what was happening by jamming all communications from human settlements. But in doing so, they forgot about the independent news networks that operated throughout the galaxy." Kira Voss, a Centauri journalist, had been investigating rumors of slave mistreatment for months. When communication blackouts started appearing around human territories, she knew something big was happening. She took her news crew to the edge of the restricted zone and started recording. What she captured changed everything. Her cameras showed hegemony warships firing on what appeared to be peaceful human settlements. But then the settlements fought back with weapons that shouldn't exist. The footage was incredible. Humans with advanced technology defending themselves against a massive alien fleet. But the real shock came when Kira's crew managed to intercept communications from the liberation operations. They recorded Chobin's rescue mission on Hades 3, showing humans risking their lives to free thousands of slaves. "This is remarkable," Kira whispered into her camera as she watched humans carrying injured slaves to safety. The species that everyone calls primitive is actually conducting the largest rescue operation in galactic history. The footage spread across the galaxy's news networks faster than wildfire. Billions of beings watched in amazement as the truth was revealed. The humans weren't the aggressors, they were the rescuers. On the peaceful world of Ryloth, citizens gathered around public viewing screens to watch the broadcasts. They saw human medics treating wounded slaves with gentle care. They saw human engineers removing slave collars and throwing them into fires. They saw human soldiers who could have killed their enemies instead choosing to capture them alive. "I don't understand," said Elder Thane, leader of the Ryloth Council. "The hegemony told us humans were dangerous and violent. But these humans, aren't you kind?" The broadcasts showed something else that shocked the galaxy. When humans rescued slaves, they didn't just free them, they fed them, gave them medical care, and asked what they wanted to do with their lives. No demands. No new forms of control, just freedom. But the most powerful footage came from the slaves themselves. Freed beings from dozens of species spoke directly to the cameras, telling their stories of hegemony, brutality, and human compassion. "IT was in that collar for 8 years," said a Kalani woman who had been rescued from Nova Prime. 8 years of pain and fear. The humans cut it off and asked my name. My name. No one had asked my name in 8 years. Public opinion across the galaxy began to shift dramatically. Species that had never questioned the hegemony's authority started asking uncomfortable questions. On the trading world of Epsilon Station, dock workers refused to load cargo destined for slaveholding systems. "We won't help move slave goods," their leader announced. Not after seeing what those humans are willing to sacrifice to stop it. The economic impact was immediate and devastating. Trade routes that had operated for centuries suddenly shut down as world after world imposed sanctions on the hegemony. The Altarian Federation, which controlled major shipping lanes, announced they would no longer allow slave ships through their territory. "The humans have shown us what true courage looks like," declared Prime Minister Zara of Altair. "We can no longer pretend we don't see the suffering around us." The slave markets that had operated openly for generations began to collapse. On Orion Central, the biggest slave auction house in the galaxy, buyers simply stopped coming. Who wanted to purchase slaves when the entire galaxy was watching and judging? But the most surprising support came from an unexpected source. Young people throughout the galaxy. Students on dozens of worlds organized protests, carrying signs with messages like, "Humans show us how to be brave," and "Freedom is not for sale." On the corporate world of Titan Industries, teenage protesters surrounded the headquarters building. "Our parents' generation built their wealth on slave labor," shouted a young Centauri woman. "We refuse to inherit that shame." The hegemony tried desperately to control the narrative. They released propaganda videos claiming humans were dangerous terrorists who threatened galactic peace. But their message fell flat when compared to the footage of humans treating rescued slaves with kindness and respect. High Commander Vrex watched the news reports with growing horror. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "How did humans become the heroes in this story?" His aide looked nervous. "Sir, the footage is compelling. When people see humans caring for freed slaves while her forces are firing on settlements, it's hard to argue that we're the good ones." "But humans are primitive," Vrex shouted. "They're supposed to be weak." "Maybe," the aide said quietly, "we were wrong about what makes someone strong." Back on Titan 7, Kim Tae watched the news broadcasts with amazement. The whole galaxy was talking about what humans had done. But more importantly, they were doing something about it. "Nearer," he said, "I think we just changed everything." She smiled, her purple eyes bright with hope. "Humans didn't just free us from our collars. You freed the galaxy from its fear of speaking up." The rebellion had become something bigger than anyone expected. It had become a galaxy-wide movement for freedom, led by the species everyone had underestimated. 1 year later, Kim Tae stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Titan 7, watching something he never thought he would see. The massive ship below them had once been the hegemony's pride, the largest slave transport in the galaxy. Now it was being converted into the Hope of Tomorrow, a hospital ship that would provide free medical care to anyone who needed it. "It's beautiful," Neera said, joining him at the viewing window. She looked completely different from the broken woman he had found in the snow. Her blue skin had a healthy glow, and she wore the simple uniform of the Telepathic Liberation Corps, an organization she now led. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," Tay replied, watching human and alien workers side by side, installing medical equipment where slave cages used to be. The changes had come faster than anyone expected. After the galactic media exposed the truth about the hegemony's brutality, the organization had collapsed within months. World after world had declared independence, refusing to send tribute or follow orders from the old regime. The Free Worlds Alliance had formed naturally, with humans playing a key role but not trying to control everything. instead of one species, ruling over others. The alliance was built on cooperation and mutual respect. Status report from the outer systems, Nira said, pressing her hand to her temple as telepathic messages flowed through her mind. The last 3 slave camps on Rigel 7 have been liberated. That's every known facility in the sector. Tay smiled. How many does that make total? 3,417 facilities shut down, over 2 million beings freed. She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. You know what the best part is? Most of the liberation operations are now being led by the former slaves themselves. It was true. The Telepathic Liberation Corps had grown into a galaxy-wide network of rescue teams. Former slaves who had been freed by humans were now using their skills and knowledge to free others. The humans had taught them something powerful, that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they worked together. Commander, Jobin is requesting permission to begin the Andromeda operation, Nira continued, relaying telepathic messages. Intelligence suggests there are slave operations in that galaxy too, already expanding beyond the Milky Way, Tay laughed. Humans really don't do anything small, do we? Through the viewing window, they could see other former hegemony ships, being converted for peaceful purposes. Warships were becoming exploration vessels, prison transports were being turned into schools, weapons factories were now producing medical equipment and farming tools, but the most important change wasn't in the ships or the buildings, it was in the people. I received a message from Captain Vex yesterday, Nira said with a slight smile. The tired slave trader who tried to take you back. Tay was surprised. What did he want? He's working at a refugee settlement on New Haven, helping process asylum applications for former slaves. He said watching humans risk everything for strangers made him realize he had been on the wrong side his whole life. Even the bad guys are becoming good guys, Tay mused. What about Commander Zek, teaching military strategy at the Alliance Academy? Turns out he's actually brilliant at defensive tactics. He just needed to use his skills to protect people instead of oppressing them. A chime from Nira's communicator interrupted their conversation. She listened for a moment, then turned to Tay with excitement in her purple eyes. The shipyard just finished the conversion. The Hope of Tomorrow is ready for its first mission. They made their way to the docking bay, where hundreds of beings had gathered for the launch ceremony. Humans, Zelani, Kalani, Centauri, and dozens of other species stood together, many of them former slaves who now worked as doctors, engineers, and teachers. Li Min and Park Sol were there, no longer needing to pretend to be simple frontier workers. They now openly served as Alliance military advisors, helping to design defenses for worlds that had never been able to protect themselves before. Speech time, Min said with a grin, gesturing toward the podium where Alliance leaders were gathering. But when they called for speakers, it wasn't the politicians or generals who stepped forward first. It was Dr. Kess, a former slave who was now the chief medical officer of the new hospital ship. 1 year ago, I was in chains, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hangar. I thought I would die as property, forgotten and unloved. But then humans showed us something we had never seen before, people who would risk everything for strangers. She looked directly at Tay and Nira. They didn't just free our bodies. They freed our hearts. They showed us that we could be heroes, too. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Dr. Kess wasn't finished. Today we launched the first hospital ship of the Free Galaxy, but it won't be the last. We're going to build a civilization where no one is left behind, where no one freezes alone in the snow, where everyone matters. As the Hope of Tomorrow powered up its engines and prepared to depart for its first mission, Tay felt Nira take his hand. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For proving that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. The ship launched into space, carrying hope to worlds that had forgotten what freedom looked like. And in that moment, Tay realized the truth. Humans hadn't conquered the galaxy through strength or technology. They had won it through compassion,